Thank you to Nature Vancouver for having me back. It's a pleasure to be speaking to you again from Boulder, Colorado, an hour ahead of you in a country south. I'm gonna play a bird sound here for you just to test speakers so that if it sounds good to all of you, if it doesn't sound good, you might want to adjust your audio levels because we're gonna play various sounds during the night. This is not one of the best bird sounds you've never heard. This is probably one of the best bird sounds you have heard. This is just a hermit thrush singing. I consider it the quintessential sound of a summer evening in the Rocky Mountains, but I like to use it just to test my levels at the start of my talks. We're going to talk tonight about a whole bunch of bird sounds that most people never hear, or maybe have never even heard of. Some of these sounds are little known. Some of them are known to the scientific community, but not to the birding community or the nature sound community very much. And so I'm going to hopefully introduce you to some new and amazing sounds that you are unaware of. And we're going to introduce this as a story in 12 chapters. So I'm gonna tell you 12 little mini stories. Each one is about a different bird, a different sound, and the mystery surrounding that sound. Before we get into the 12 stories, let's talk about why you haven't heard these 12 sounds that I'm about to introduce to you. I get three main excuses for why people haven't heard them. Number one, I sleep too late. Many of the sounds that you're about to hear are only available to those who get up really, really early in the morning, long before first light. You will hear some amazing things that you don't hear at any other time of day. Excuse number two. Let's see if I can get to excuse number two. There it is. I'm too far south. Even in Canada, many people live way too far south to hear all of the really interesting bird sounds that we have on offer. So hopefully I will introduce you to some new things that are available to hear farther north than where you live. And finally, I expected prettier. Many people actually do hear these bird sounds, but they overlook them. They ignore them. They think, oh, a bird song is supposed to be really, really beautiful and loud and long and in your face. And some birds are singing right under your nose, and you might not have appreciated their complexity or their beauty. So these are going to be our top three themes as we move through our 12 different sounds this evening. Let's start with the tale of the automatic recording units. Now, an automatic recording unit, if you're not aware, is a machine. It's an automatic recorder that you can put out into the field and it will record audio for you so that you don't have to be out there 24/7 listening to birds. A friend of mine named Andy Boyce is a researcher for the Smithsonian Institution. He works on the American Prairie Reserve, which is in eastern Montana. It's actually just south of the Canadian border, just south of the border with Alberta. And out there, part of what he does is he does research on prairie birds. He puts trackers on Sprague's pipits and long-billed curlews. But he also had an opportunity to work on our two species of cuckoo that breed in that region, yellow-billed cuckoo and black-billed cuckoo, both of which are endangered species in Montana, both of which nest along the Missouri River, just south of his research area, in a very remote area called the Missouri Breaks. To get into the Missouri Breaks and actually do cuckoo surveys where there's no roads for several dozens of miles, it takes a lot of time to get a field tech all the way back in there. So instead of hiring people who were going to have to do those hard hikes all summer long, he decided he was going to buy a couple of automatic recording units and place them out on trees so that they could do the recording for him. So they were listening for the songs of the cuckoos. That's the song of the black-billed cuckoo. And here's the song of the yellow-billed cuckoo. These are the two songs that he wanted to pick up on his field recorders. The field recorders look like this. They're little, green boxes that you can attach to a tree. You stick them out there at the start of your field season. They record for you, and then you go back out at the end of the field season and you retrieve uh, the hard drive and the recorder. Uh, Unfortunately, they cannot record 24/7 all summer long. They neither have enough battery life for that, nor do they have enough memory for that on their memory card. So you have to program them to record at certain times so that you can maximize the efficacy of your recordings. So Andy decided that he was going to program his recorders to record just the early morning dawn chorus, like from 5 a.m. to 8 a.m. every morning during the summer, when the birds are most likely to sing. And then he was only going to have to pay field techs to go in there once at the start of the summer and once at the end of the summer, once to place the units and once to retrieve the units, instead of going back and forth all summer long to do surveys. Sounded like a great plan. There was a kink in this plan. He realized it after he had placed all of these automatic recording units out in the field. They were all out there on the trees recording, and he realized that the internal clock on these recording units that he had purchased were all set to universal coordinated time, Greenwich Mean Time. So they were set to time in London, England. And when he programmed them to record from 5 a.m. to 8 a.m., he was recording in Greenwich Mean Time instead of Mountain Daylight Time, which means that in Montana, his recorders were turning on at 10 p.m. every night and recording until 3 a.m., and then they were shutting off until 10 p.m. the following night. And when he realized this, he thought, well, there's one set of grant money down the drain. Everybody makes mistakes. He made a big mistake. He was recording through the middle of the night, and that was all he was going to be able to do until he went back. He couldn't get another field tech out there to like switch all the clocks. So he was like, I'm just going to have to record at midnight all summer long, retrieve these, and try again next summer. The amazing thing is when he went out and retrieved all of his units at the end of the summer, and he actually looked at the audio and thought, what have I recorded between 10 p.m. and 3 a.m. every night? The answer was he had recorded cuckoos. He had recorded black-billed and yellow-billed cuckoos singing all throughout the middle of the night. Nobody knew that both cuckoo species sing all night long, but they do. And the only reason he figured it out was because of this horrible mistake that he made, misprogramming the time on his devices. In fact, it turned out that recording in the middle of the night was actually a much better way to survey for cuckoos because they are the only two species in Montana that are singing in the middle of the night. So it's way easier to go through the recordings and analyze them looking for cuckoo song, much easier than if you were recording the dawn chorus when there's 50 other species singing. So completely by accident, he actually got to publish a paper on this and everything. He discovered a better way to survey for the cuckoos that nobody had figured out because nobody was out there starting their surveys at 10 p.m. That leads me to another story that I heard when I was invited to speak a couple years ago in upstate New York. I was up near the Catskill and Adirondack Mountains, and up there they have a very special bird called the Bicknell's thrush. The Bicknell's thrush breeds only up at tree line in New England and in the Canadian Maritime provinces. And it's an endangered species. And the people who live in that region, they do a lot of surveys for Bicknell's thrush. They ask for volunteers to go up and do a Bicknell's thrush survey protocol. So these birds are famous for singing very early in the morning. And they typically breed up at tree line on 4,000-foot peaks that you have to hike up, where there's no roads up into their habitat. So what people were having to do is they would have to hike up the night before, camp out, and then start their surveys at like 3:30 in the morning to try to record these Bicknell's thrushes. This is what they were listening for. That is the beautiful song of the Bicknell's thrush. It is not a particularly fancy bird to look at, but it is a beautiful bird to hear. If you remember from my earlier presentation, all birds have two voices. All birds can sing duets with themselves. Not all birds use this ability, but the big-nosed thrush is one that does. And when it sings, you're actually hearing it duetting with itself. So I was talking to a guy who went up and did surveys for big-nosed thrush, and he said that he had noticed a big problem. He would hike up all summer long and get up there in June, and he would camp out the night before. And he'd be lying there in his sleeping bag, and the big-nosed thrushes would wake him up. He would start like hearing them about 2 o'clock in the morning, 2:30 in the morning, and he would think, okay, great, there are big-nosed thrushes here. I'll get them on my survey. And then he would wake up and start his survey protocol at the scheduled time, which was 3:30 in the morning, and he would record zero Bicknell's thrushes on his surveys because 3:30 in the morning, it turned out, was too late. They had stopped singing by 3:30 in the morning. And if you start your protocol at 3:30 in the morning, you are done. You can't, the Bicknell's thrushes are done singing and you can't hear them anymore up there. The only reason that we figured out that this was the case was because he was actually sleeping in a sleeping bag on his survey spot and realized that the survey protocol was all wrong. People were not getting up early enough in the morning for this middle of the night bird. So here's another bird that sings in the middle of the night. And this one, unlike the cuckoos, often does not continue singing during the day. It's mostly a middle of the night singer in early June. So it might be underreported for that reason. Let me tell you another story about an invisible bird. A number of years ago, I was hiking up near my house here in Colorado in Rocky Mountain National Park, and I was hoping to get the second ever audio recordings of a black swift. Black swifts are amazing birds that nest all throughout the western United States. They nest behind waterfalls. They are one of the coolest and most amazing birds on earth. The adults often fly through the falling water to get to their nest behind the waterfall. The chicks often are never dry between the time when they hatch and the time when they fledge. Their first flight from the nest is the first time they get out of the mist zone of the waterfall. Uh, these birds, because they fly so high during the day and because they live in such noisy areas right near pounding waterfalls, they are rarely audio recorded. My friend Bob Ryder, who lives here in Denver, was the very first person to ever record a black swift, and that wasn't until the early 1990s. And in the mid 2000s, around 2007, I was hoping to be one of the next people to record the audio of Black Swift. I had found a place where Black Swifts nest. I was going to have to hike in the middle of the night in order to get up there by dawn behind this small waterfall. I had received special permission from the national park to get up there. And so I was hiking up in the middle of the night, and I was not even halfway there yet. I was hiking up on a deserted trail in the dark by myself, and I started to hear something circling high over my head in the dark. And this is what I was hearing. When I first heard that, my heart kind of like jumped into my throat. And I thought, oh my gosh, there are black swifts right over my head. I'm not going to have to hike all the way up to the waterfall. I've got them right here. But as I heard this bird sing longer, I thought, nope, this is not a black swift. And after a while, I figured out what it was. This is the dawn song of the violet green swallow. Now, you may not realize that the violet green swallow has a dawn song. They don't sing like what I just played during the day. In fact, this is another bird that if you've gotten up and the sun is starting to rise, you're probably too late to hear the dawn song of violet green swallow. This is another bird you're likely to hear from your campsite when you're in your sleeping bag at 4 o'clock in the morning. And then they quit by the time it starts to get light. They circle overhead. It was hard to like keep the mic pointed at the bird because I couldn't see the bird. All I could see were the stars, but I knew it was up there somewhere, and it kept moving around, circling over my head. The violet green swallow's dawn song is so rarely heard that the world's foremost expert in swallows, who's an ornithologist named Charles Brown, who's done a running study on cliff swallows for the last 35 years. When he did a paper on the swallow songs of North America, he wrote that violet green swallows do not sing. This was back in the 1980s when he wrote that. But he had not been able to find any recordings or examples or reports of violet green swallows singing because at that time nobody had realized that they sing in the middle of the night. Now, there are other species of swallows that have specialized dawn songs that you're only going to hear at dawn. Tree swallows love to have their songs that they sing at dawn. They'll sing them also a little bit later in the day, so you're more likely to hear those. Same with barn swallows and purple martins. They actually have specialized songs that you hear at dawn and not later. The same is true of most species of kingbirds, several species of flycatchers, and a few other kinds of birds that have special songs they'll sing at dawn, and then you won't usually hear those same songs later in the day. So this is a really interesting phenomenon that happens actually across the bird kingdom, and it has caused some bird songs to be missed for many, many years and by many, many people. And by the way, if you didn't realize that Western North America has the world's most beautiful swallow, uh, here's the proof. And that's not even a great photo of it. It's a great, great bird. Let's talk about the owl that nobody hears. You're probably familiar with what owls are supposed to sound like. The big ones say some version of hoo, or some pattern that has hoots. And then the little ones have like a little bit higher tooting whistles. Um, there's one owl in North America that I don't think anybody hears. At least you don't hear its song. A lot of people don't even realize that this owl can sing, that it has a hooting song, and yet it absolutely does. And you just have to be in the right time and place to hear it. And that owl is the short-eared owl. The short-eared owl is an owl that most people see before they hear it. That's unusual for owls. This owl is active at dawn and dusk, sometimes during the day. You go out and you look at in fields and you see them flying over the fields. Most places in the US, people see these birds mostly in winter. But they do breed all across Canada and Alaska and the northern Great Plains of the US. And if you're in a place where short-eared owls breed, you might get to hear and witness their amazing courtship displays in spring. And they do two things for their courtship display. First of all, they have a hooting song that very few people have ever heard. In fact, when I published my field guide in 2017, I was only able to find one good recording of this song anywhere on Earth. Now there are a few more, and I have been lucky enough to record it myself since then. I went out into southwest South Dakota a few years ago and was camping out on the national grassland. South Dakota is my home state. And I was out there in the middle of the night, and I knew there were going to be short-eared owls because I had seen them courting at dusk as I was driving in. But at dusk, there was too much traffic noise in that spot to record them. So I set my alarm and I got up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I could hear both sounds of the short-eared owl, both the the hooting song and the wing claps. As they are flying around, giving this courtship display, either in daylight or in the dark, they will give the hooting song and then they will clap their wings 5 to 10 times really fast underneath their body while they are flying. They actually start to fall out of the sky while they are clapping their wings like this, and then they catch themselves and continue flying. And they will alternate the hooting song with the wing clap display. And this is amazing to witness and freely available to anybody who gets to the breeding grounds of short-eared owls, but that's not very many people. So I'm going to play for you the recording I made in South Dakota, and you can hear both the hooting song and the wing claps. Listen carefully. I hope you were able to hear that. It's not a very loud recording. And if you don't have good speakers, the low-pitched hooting might not come through very well. But you heard the hooting song from a couple of individuals at the start and end there. And then once in the middle, you heard this. It wasn't very loud, but that was the wing clap display. I actually have a video of it that I'm going to play for you. And this video was taken by my friend Bryce Robinson, who lives in Idaho. Unfortunately, this doesn't have good enough video for you to hear, doesn't have good enough audio for you to hear the wing claps. But if you watch carefully, you'll be able to see when the bird wing claps and starts to like fall out of the sky for a second before it catches itself. You'll hear other birds, not the owl, but you will see the wing clapping display. So watch carefully. Right there. I'm going to play that again because it's so amazing. Watch this bird clap its wings 5 times under its body real quick. Right there. That is an amazing thing that short-eared owls do. They are not the only birds that clap their wings like that in a flight display. Long-eared owls do the same thing, although long-eared owls tend to only clap once instead of this little series. And some other birds also clap their wings in flight during flight displays, including several different kinds of nightjar, such as whippoorwill and chuckwill's widow. Okay, so I'm gonna I'm going to give you a mystery here, and this mystery stumps people in most parts of the world and most parts of North America. But I wonder, maybe people in Vancouver might know this one. So I'm going to play you a sound, and I'm just going to ask you to try to guess, and you can guess in the chat if you dare. Um, Try to guess what kind of bird this is coming from. And if you know the exact species, fantastic. But I'm just talking about like, can you tell what broad kind of bird this is coming from? Is this coming from a woodpecker? Is it a hawk? Is it a crane? What group of birds is this coming from? I'm going to play it, and we will see how people do. Joanna guessed thrush already before she even heard the bird. I don't know if she's going to guess thrush again. I'm going to play it one more time, and while I'm playing it a second time, go ahead and decide what your guess is, and go ahead and put a guess in the chat if you like. The guesses that I'm seeing here are gull, owl, shorebird, duck, long-tailed duck, some kind of seabird, northern saw-whet owl. These are all good guesses. Long-tailed duck is a pretty good guess, although it's not a long-tailed duck. They have a much lower pitched voice. Uh, Saw-whet owls and loons have sounds that sound kind of like this, but this is neither of those. Um, this is, in fact, a black scoter. This is the song of the black scoter. The first time I ever heard this sound, it was in the background of an audio recording that I was listening to that had been recorded in the Arctic in summer. And I heard this thing in the background and I thought, what is that? I do not recognize that at all, but it's very distinctive and it's very vocal. It keeps repeating. We don't often think of ducks as having songs or having like these whistled sounds that they make, but some ducks actually do. In fact, ducks rate near the top of the birds that I would say are under-recorded, underappreciated when it comes to their sounds. Almost every duck species has multiple different kinds of sounds that it makes. Males and females usually have different sounds. There is a whole repertoire of sounds for different kinds of displays, different kinds of moods. And yet, these sounds are rarely recorded and very little known, not because you can't go hear them readily, but because people just don't point microphones at ducks because they don't think that ducks have anything interesting to say. A few years ago, this species, black scoter, was split from the common scoter of Europe and Asia, partly because, the orange knob on the male's bill is quite different. But actually, the main reason that it was split was because the sounds are completely different. If you hear the song of black scoters and the song of what we now call common scoters in Europe and Asia, they sound totally different. And this is one of the actual things that people had not noticed because they don't spend a lot of time listening to ducks. Which brings me to another group of birds that we don't listen to enough. Those of us who live at lower latitudes outside the Arctic, we tend to think of sandpipers as birds that stick their bill into mud and just hang out on beaches or mud flats or the sides of ponds. And they don't say much, right? They just probably have a couple chirping sounds as they are flying away. They don't do a whole lot except gather in flocks and forage like this. Here is a pectoral sandpiper, and here is what most people hear from pectoral sandpipers in winter and migration. Just little chirps and cheeps like that. That's all you're likely to hear from a sandpiper in winter and migration as they are flying away from you or flying down the seashore. We think of sandpipers as this, but in fact, sandpipers are remarkable singers. Almost every kind of sandpiper has more than one amazing song and some really incredible displays. So if you have only seen pectoral sandpipers doing this, and you've never seen pectoral sandpipers flying over the tundra in springtime with their neck sacs inflated, making this remarkable sound, then here's a surprise for you. That is the display flight and the display sound of a male pectoral sandpiper. You can only hear that sound up in the Arctic in the spring and summer. This is another sound that I heard for the first time in the background of a recording from the Arctic, and I thought, what in the world could that possibly be? I had no idea it could be a sandpiper. And this is only one of the songs of pectoral sandpiper and only one of the kinds of display. And it's only one species of sandpiper. Almost every sandpiper has something really, really weird that it does. A lot of times, if you go up to the Arctic, you will see things like solitary sandpipers, lesser yellowlegs, sitting on top of a tree and singing and defending a territory, doing things that we think of as what songbirds do, but shorebirds do all of that when they're up on their breeding territories. And that's something that most of us live too far south to ever reliably see. All right. I'm going to play for you another amazing sound that you are only likely to hear in cattail marshes. This is not the primary song of this species. One of the takeaways here today is that many, many birds have more than one kind of song, more than one category of song. And these different alternate songs happen in different circumstances. This is a really weird sound that happens in a very bizarre situation. I'm going to play it for you here and let you try to figure out what it might be. That is what is sometimes called the hawk song of the yellow-headed blackbird. If you're familiar with yellow-headed blackbirds, you're probably familiar with their normal song, their most common songs, which are, they sound like cats being strangled. And they'll make those songs all the time, all day long during the cattail marsh. But that longer, more complex song that I just played for you, you're only likely to hear that if a hawk flies over the marsh and then all the male yellow-headed blackbirds fly up to attack the hawk. When they're attacking the hawk, instead of giving alarm calls like any sensible bird, they have this other whole complex song that's apparently a form of aggression that they try to use against hawks. I've seen them use it against bitterns and other large herons, which I guess they're probably mistaking for hawks. But you're rarely going to hear this song in any other circumstance. If you go to a cattail marsh and you spend long enough watching and listening, you will hear this during the course of any day in spring or summer, but you're not going to hear it very often. And if you do hear it, you're not going to probably, unless you see what's making it, you're not going to connect it with yellow-headed blackbird, which is a truly amazing thing. Interestingly, this notion that some birds might sing when they're attacking a predator, is rare, but it is recorded in some other species. Rusty blackbirds, which are, loosely related to yellow-headed blackbirds, also apparently out of their three kinds of songs that they sing, one of them is most commonly given during nest defense against predators, which is kind of weird. And uh, the another bird that apparently does something similar is the phainopepla. The phainopepla has a beautiful melodious song that it sings, when it wants to attract a mate. If you catch a phainopepla in a net, it will give a whisper song that's very complex and soft, and that includes all these imitations of other bird species, more like something that a mockingbird would sing. Why do they do that when they are under extreme threat? We have no idea. But that's one of the only contexts in which the complex song of the Phainopepla has been recorded. Okay, let me play you a sound that doesn't exist, or at least that is reputed not to exist. It does, in fact, exist. I will play it for you, and I will again let you guess what you think, what kind of bird this might be, what group of birds it might come from. Here we go. Here it is again. Kind of weird sound. You've probably never heard this sound. When I say that this sound is not supposed to exist, I mean this bird is not supposed to have a voice. In fact, the name of the bird is mute swan. It's supposed to be silent. Uh, Interestingly, our other two species of swan in North America were named for their calls, or at least the old names. We had the trumpeter swan and the formerly known as whistling swan, now known as tundra swan. Uh, those species are very vocal, as you're probably aware. You get lots of those two species in Vancouver. This species, the mute swan, is found in eastern North America, where it was introduced from Europe, and it's common in Europe. And this species is supposedly silent, but it's not silent at all. I've never heard this sound because I've never really spent a lot of time close to mute swans. But if you get close to them, they do make this weird, like pig-like oinking sound, and they make it quite regularly. So mute swan, similar to bald eagle, is just a really bad name for this bird. I'm going to play for you now a sound that probably is not going to sound familiar, but it is a sound that you have probably heard. I'm going to play it for you, and I'm just going to ask you the first time through to just admire its virtuosity, admire how good this bird is at singing. Here we go. If you were to hear that, you would have to admit that bird is a pretty good singer. It's got a lot going on. It's musical, it's complex, it keeps changing what it's doing. Here's the thing, you have heard this bird many times, but you've probably never heard it the way I just played it for you, which was slowed down to 1/3 of its normal speed. Here's how you normally probably hear it. This is, of course, the song of the house sparrow, which is not only a beautiful bird to look at, underappreciated in its colors here, but also a beautiful bird to listen to that most people think all it does is chirp. But actually, it's got a long and very complex song. Here's a spectrogram of just the first seven of those songs from the recording. I'm going to play the recording and you can kind of like admire the complexity of these sounds here. Uh, and again, these are just the first seven in the series. Here's the song. But the human ear is not set up to hear all those details on such fine timescales. So you can really only hear it when we slow the song down. So I'll play it slowed down again. Look at these first seven shapes and try to follow along with the first seven sounds and admire again the complexity of this bird. This bird, like the big-nosed thrush that we heard earlier, is actually singing with both of its voices at the same time. As you may have noticed, one of the themes of this talk is trying to get you to appreciate the underappreciated, and house sparrows, I think, definitely fall into that category. The mystery of the pines. I'm going to play for you a mystery sound that people send me on a fairly regular basis from the mountains of Colorado. And they could also have recorded it in British Columbia or the mountains in the western U.S. Anywhere in the western U.S. People record this sound and they don't know what it is and they send it to me and they say, "What could this possibly be?" I've had this happen to me at least two or three times with this sound. I'm going to play it for you and we can discuss. This is a very interesting sound. If you heard it, you would probably call it some kind of song. It's got three notes. It is polyphonic. This bird is singing with both of its voices. It's got this weird rising cadence to it. But it's not a song. It's actually the begging call of a juvenile Townsend's solitaire. Townsend solitaires have such long and lovely songs that even the begging babies apparently can't help but sing something that's kind of song-like and musical. They've got this three-note rising polyphonic begging call. This is far and away the most complex begging call that I'm aware of in any North American bird. Although interestingly, other species of solitaire, like the Andean solitaire in South America, apparently also have complex polyphonic begging calls. So it seems like it's a solitaire thing. I have never actually heard this sound myself. It's rarely given, even when you have juvenile solitaires around. They don't like to give it very often. But when they do give it, they'll give it over and over again for a while. And when people hear it and record it, they often have no idea what it is. And a friend of mine made the recording I just shared with you up in the mountains here, just outside Denver a few years ago. He called me right away. He said, "What is this?" And I said, that's a begging juvenile solitaire. And can you take me to it so I can record it?" And he took me out there the very next day, and we found the juvenile solitaire, and it wouldn't say anything. So I still haven't heard this sound myself, but I hope to one day. All right, so we already talked about a bird that is not supposed to have a voice, but let's talk about a bird that actually doesn't have a voice, except maybe it kind of does. When I say a bird that actually doesn't have a voice, there's a bird that you have seen probably hundreds of times, and you have almost certainly never heard. There's actually probably lots of birds in this category, but there's one that I'm more confident in saying this than any other bird, and that is the turkey vulture. Notice here's an actual scientific article, not very long. This is the whole thing. Um, but back in the 50s, this was published in the Auk saying we dissected a turkey vulture and we found that it has no vocal organ. It cannot make sounds the way that other birds make sounds. Now, turkey vultures actually do make hisses and grunt sounds, at least if they're on a kill or if they're at the nest. But it's very, very rare to hear a turkey vulture. I have never heard a turkey vulture make a vocal sound. Um, Black vulture, apparently, according to the birds of the world here, is in the same boat. Also lacks a syrinx, also lacks muscles attached to that syrinx. And yet, note how many different sounds are being described here. A guff, 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 like dogs barking in the distance, like hogs at feeding. Long drawn out hissing noise when disturbed. Uh, when I was in Mississippi a few years ago, again, invited down to give a bird talk, I was out birding one morning and I came upon a carcass of a deer or a cow that was being attacked by a horde of black vultures. And I was able to get video and audio of the vultures. And I noticed that they actually, even though they can kind of only grunt and hiss, they actually have multiple different kinds of sounds that are each associated with different behaviors and different displays. I'm going to play you some video from the vulture kill that I witnessed. Uh, Trigger warning for, gore and vultures ripping apart a dead carcass. But pay careful attention to the sounds that the vultures are making and the behaviors that are associated with those sounds. In the first one, you'll just kind of hear the normal feeding sounds of this horde of vultures. So there were actually two different sounds being made there. One of them is a slightly louder woof, woof sound. Like dogs barking in the distance is actually a really good descriptor. But if you were able to listen very carefully and if you have good speakers on your computer, you might have also heard this like this like low, almost like a purring or vibrating sound that seems to be like one of their feeding calls. The woof seems to be a little bit more of an aggressive call. You'll notice that they were making it when they were jumping or like flapping their wings, but then this like sound is much softer and appears to be kind of, I don't know, I'm not sure what it means, but it almost sounds like a contented feeding sound. I'm going to play another clip from just a little bit later, same birds, and you'll get to hear the aggressive sound here as well. So you see when they really get upset with each other, they do that hissing. So there's at least three different vocal sounds in the black vulture's repertoire. That's a pretty complex vocal repertoire for a bird that apparently has no voice. Just for the record, three different sounds with different meanings is more complexity than you have in the vocal repertoire of the cedar waxwing, as far as we know. Now, interestingly, I just played you what I know of the vocal repertoire of Black Vulture, but Black Vulture also has a non-vocal repertoire. When black vultures are flying, they make sound with their wings. If they just fly away from you, you'll hear the wing beats. It's like a boom, boom, boom sound. That's probably not communicative. It's probably just the way that their wings are structured. However, on a couple of occasions in Mexico, I have been lucky enough to witness the dive displays, the flight displays of black vultures. And the first time that I witnessed it, I didn't know what it was. I didn't know that it was going on. I heard it before I saw it. Because when a black vulture goes into a dive display, their wings suddenly make a vibrating whoosh, similar to like the way that like a nighthawk's wing, well, a nighthawk, it's the wings that make the sound, or a snipe, it's the tail, right, that makes the sound when these birds go into dive displays in flight. Black vultures do something kind of similar, and they make this weird sound with their wings, almost like missiles streaking past you, like I heard this across a valley one time and was able to figure out that it was coming from black vulture doing a flight display. Um, and this is something that at the time I had no idea it existed. It turns out that other people have now recorded this flight display and it has now been mentioned in the scientific literature, but it was not mentioned in that earlier Birds of the World article that you just read. So it's a new sound that we've only relatively recently realized that black vultures make. And there might be other undiscovered sounds out there from common and widespread species, such as this one. And that brings us to our 12th and final recording of the night. I call it the virtuoso close to home. I'm talking about my home in Boulder, Colorado, but this is also a virtuoso that lives close to your home in Vancouver. Last month, I was at the Space Coast Birding Festival giving this talk in Florida, and I had to tell them that they were not likely to hear this bird in Florida. But in British Columbia, the answer is yes, you definitely have this bird. Uh, and it's common and widespread. I'm going to play this sound for you, and I will let you try to figure out what might be making it. Isn't that a wonderful song? Uh, that is a really complex sound, and you might have noticed that it has all sorts of imitations of other species in it. I'm seeing lots of interesting guesses in the chat. Anna's hummingbird is a really good guess. Finch is a good guess. R2D2 is entirely within the realm of possibility here. Purple martins, wrens, great guesses. Meadowlark, all great guesses. None of these are correct, and none of these are in the right family. Here is the bird that I just played for you. That is the whisper song of the Steller's jay. And we are probably used to Steller's jay just saying psh, psh, psh. They're known for their very harsh and unmusical vocalizations. We don't think of jays as being songbirds. In fact, jays and crows have been called songbirds without a song. And yet, Almost every species of jay in North America has a complex musical imitative whisper song that it gives at least occasionally. Magpies also have these whisper songs that they'll give that are extremely complex and musical with imitations of other species. The weird thing about these songs is that they are rarely heard. They're very soft. They are apparently given outside the breeding season mostly. Magpies, for instance, love to give their whisper songs in early fall. This bird, this Steller's jay that I recorded was in March, so beginning of the breeding season. But this bird was completely by itself. No other Steller's jays around. It was just singing to itself as it foraged in the middle of the forest. We don't exactly understand why birds like this have complex whisper songs. California scrub jays will have this, blue jays, green jays, gray jays. All these birds have these complex whisper songs. Sometimes they're giving them to each other, and sometimes they're giving them apparently to themselves, like this bird that I just played for you. It's a mystery. And this remains one of the things that I love most about bird sounds is the mysteries. I've played for you some solved mysteries today, but the amazing thing about bird sounds is that whenever you are studying them, you are standing right on the edge of human knowledge. There is so much out there to learn about the sounds, even of common and widespread species. I've played for you some sounds that like nobody knew about until just a couple of years ago, and also some that somebody knew about, but maybe not me, maybe not you. There's so much to learn, even in our own backyards, even from common and widespread birds. And that's one of the things I love about bird sounds. So with that, I'm going to say thank you for your attention, and I will open it up to questions, and we can talk about bird sounds as long as you like.
Thank you so much, Nathan. That was truly fascinating and eye-opening talk. We'll now open the floor for questions. If you have a question, please feel free to drop it in the chat, or if you can raise your hand, I'll call on them as they come out. And we have some comments here. We had somebody at the very beginning comment that um, the Catskills are not in New England, but in New York. And
That is
then
true.
let's see, and just some people
Same is true
comment.
of the Adirondacks.
Thank you so much, Nathan. That was amazing. Thank you. Wonderfully enlightening. Does anyone have any comments or questions?
I see Michael has his hand up.
Okay, Michael, go ahead.
Feel free to unmute yourself, Michael.
Let me try to help
Hey,
you.
can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh,
Now we
hi
can hear
Nathan,
you.
thank you for your talk. Yeah, I've always been really interested in birdsong, and over the years I've looked at birdsong in a few different ways. I know that I've played with music production and making spectrograms, and I know I can paint images in spectrograms and play them back and then see images that are made from sound. And I also know that bats echolocate, and as humans we communicate by saying words and making sounds that have meaning intrinsically. And I was just wondering if out of all of those things, like echolocation and kind of painting a picture, transmitting it through sound and just saying like, hey, I'm here, this is what I'm doing, in way of like an alarm call or something. Like, which of those do you see in the bird kingdom? And do you think there's any way that birds might be painting pictures to one another or echolocating or those kinds of things?
Great questions. So first, I will address echolocation. Certain birds absolutely do echolocate. There's several species of swiftlets in Asia, Southeast Asia, and Oceania that live in dark caves, and they echolocate much the same as bats do. They actually nest kind of like in the same caves as the bats, um, and they'll fly in the complete dark and echolocate and build a nest, and then they'll fly out and catch insects and fly back in and echolocate in the cave. Um, there's also a bird called the oil bird that lives in South America. It's a weird, large bird about the size of a nighthawk. It's a nocturnal frugivore. It eats fruit. It's the world's only nocturnal fruit-eating bird. They live in caves and they echolocate in the caves, and then at night they fly out of the caves and go into the rainforest, and they fly up underneath hanging fruit and pluck it off the branch at night on the wing. And the interesting thing about oil birds is that their echolocating clicks are audible to the human ear. So in 2007, I went to Venezuela and I was able to go to the national park where the echolocating oil birds live. And I was able to get permission to go into the cave at 4 o'clock in the morning, which is when all the oil birds are flying in back into the cave after a night of foraging. And it sounds like a huge flock of typewriters passing over your head in the dark. Um, but those are the echolocating clicks of the oil birds. Uh, you also asked about birds painting pictures with sound. So echolocation is a literal way of doing that. And there are certainly birds that communicate using sound in some of the same ways that we do, i.e., they have a particular sound that they'll make and it kind of means a particular thing. So like there's a particular uh, sound that cliff swallows make when they have found food and they want other members of the colony to come quick and take advantage of this swarm of flying insects. Um, so that word, if you want to call it that, in cliff swallow language means I've found food. Um, whereas there's other bird sounds that communicate not using the sound but using the syntax. So in red-winged blackbirds, any call repeated over and over again means all clear. And any switch from one call type to another means danger. So the individual words in that language are meaningless. It doesn't matter which call the red-winged blackbird switches to when the hawk shows up. What matters is that the red-winged blackbird switches calls. So that's a really interesting communication system because the symbols themselves don't mean anything, but the relationship of symbols in time to one another carries meaning. So those are just some examples for you that I hope kind of start to answer your question.
Thank you, Nathan. Ivy has a question on, do you have a bird song that you haven't narrowed down that stays on your mind?
I I'm guessing this means like a bird song that I've recorded but I haven't identified. If that's what Ivy means, then the answer is yes. There are lots of bird songs that I've recorded and uh, I don't know what bird made them. Uh, there's a website on there's a website called Xenocanto where you can upload your bird sounds, and Xenocanto allows you to upload unknown bird sounds, and then other people will listen and try to identify your mystery bird sounds. And I've had a lot of people solve a lot of the mysteries that I've uploaded, and I've been able to solve some of the other people's mysteries. But there's a whole bunch of things I've uploaded that have never been solved. A lot of it's stuff I recorded in Mexico or in Venezuela, but some of it's stuff I recorded, in the US or Canada. You can record things and uh, there's an awful lot that isn't easy to identify. There's also sounds that I've recorded from birds where I saw the bird and I know what made it, but I have no idea what the sound is. Like it's not a known call or song of that species. And so it's a mystery as to why the bird was making it and what it means. There's so much more to learn about bird sounds, even common ones. So the answer is an emphatic yes.
Larry had a question. He had a statement first. I love hearing the pectoral sandpiper in the Arctic. Thank you for telling us about it. His question is, can you talk about pelagic birds and recording their voices?
So pelagic birds is a really interesting. Many pelagic birds like storm petrels and auklets and murrelets and albatross, they actually make a lot of different sounds when they are nesting on their remote nesting islands. And then they're very difficult to hear during most of the year because they're flying over the water. If you go out on a pelagic trip, you're not likely to hear most of those birds. You can sometimes hear things like shearwaters or albatrosses making sounds if you are throwing food to them and they start fighting. You can actually, I know people who have recorded various sounds of those birds from boats. But the real way to record those birds is to get onto an island and put a microphone next to a nest or into a nesting burrow. And in recent years, people have started to do this, and this is a huge reason why many, many species of seabird have been split. Like different kinds of shearwaters, different kinds of murrelets have been split because they realized that the populations nesting on different islands, they look fairly similar, but they sound completely different. And because they have such different sounds and they're so vocal at their nesting colonies, they're not likely to choose a mate that sounds different than them, which means that they're actually biologically separated species on these different islands. So birds like, when Corey's shearwater was split into, what is it, Fayette? No, that's a different one. Corey's and Balearic shearwaters were split, right? Or Fayez and Zeno's petrels were split, or Guadalupe Murrelet and Scripps' Murrelet and Creveri's Murrelet. All of these were split in part on vocal differences. I have never really had an opportunity to do much recording of pelagic birds. I live very far from oceans, and I am, not so much a pelagic expert, but there's a lot of really interesting research going on in that realm.
Justin had a question. Do you have any thoughts on Merlin Sound ID versus bird nets?
Yes, so Merlin Sound ID and BirdNet are both automatic bird song recognition algorithms. They're both things that are free to use that anybody can use. Merlin you can just download as an app. BirdNet is a little bit more complicated to use. Both of them were developed independently by two different teams at the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. So they're both from the same lab, but they're from different teams using different approaches. Um, for a while there, about 5 to 10 years ago, BirdNet was actually better at audio ID than Merlin. And more recently, Merlin has overtaken BirdNet in accuracy. But both of them are useful. They're useful for different things. So Merlin is really, really good at the kind of ID that you would just run on your phone when you're just hit record and have Merlin tell you what the birds are in real time. That's what Merlin was kind of designed for. That's what it's good at. BirdNet is used by a lot of people, including researchers like my friend Andy, when he has hours and hours of recordings of cuckoos and he wants to go through and find all the cuckoo songs. BirdNet is better for that kind of thing. So researchers use BirdNet a lot, whereas recreational birders use Merlin more. Both of them are pretty good at bird sounds. They both make mistakes. They make similar kinds of mistakes. They're roughly equivalent programs in a lot of ways. That's about all I can tell you about those two. I know Merlin pretty well. I use it regularly. I've never actually used BirdNet. I just mostly know it by reputation.
Thank you. Do birds that live in multiple countries have different accents?
Yes, they absolutely do. And also, you don't have to go to different countries. You don't have to go that far to find a different accent. So the white-crowned sparrows that nest in coastal Canada, you only have to go 5 to 10 miles to find the different accent. If you go to any part of the coast of British Columbia or up in the mountains where white-crowned sparrows breed, you will find that all the white-crowned sparrows in one spot all sing the same song. Each individual male just sings one song his whole life, and all the ones that breed on a particular mountainside or at a particular park, they almost always share the exact same song. But you go 5 miles, 10 miles down the road to the next park, at a certain point, you're going to find an invisible line in the sand. And on the other side of that invisible line, the song is different. And then all those birds over there sing with that different accent. It might be different by only a couple of notes, but then you go another 10 miles and there's going to be another difference in notes. And all up the coast, all down the coast into California, all throughout the Rocky Mountains, all across boreal Canada, all the white-crowned sparrows have these dialect regions. And in white-crowned sparrow, they're very small. They're only a few miles in diameter. So there's hundreds and hundreds of different accents in white-crowned sparrows. In some birds, the accent regions are much larger. So in golden-crowned sparrows, they're hundreds of miles instead of 10 or 20 miles before you get to a different accent. And in things like black-capped chickadee, like 90% of all the black-capped chickadees sing like that's the standard black-capped chickadee song across almost all of North America. But when you are west of the Cascades in coastal Washington, and I presume in Vancouver as well, the black-capped chickadees sound different. And they sing something more like something a little bit more like that. Uh, and that's just a weird regional dialect, a different accent of the black-capped chickadee that is in the Pacific Northwest, west of the Cascades. So those are two great examples of birds with different accents.
I have two questions for you, Nathan. So in story number 9, when you were discussing the house sparrows and the slow down song, what did you mean by both voices? Can you explain what you meant by this?
Yes. So you and I have one voice apiece. We make sound using a vocal organ called a larynx. It's up here in our throat. But birds have a totally different vocal organ. It's called a syrinx. It's located down inside the chest at the Y junction, where the trachea splits into two bronchi, one to go to each lung. And birds have a sound producing membrane in each bronchus, which means that they have one voice that they control with their right lung and a different voice that they control with their left lung, which means in theory, they can actually vocalize with two different voices at the exact same time. They can sing two completely different notes at the same time. All birds, in theory, have this ability, even vultures, in theory, but most birds don't use this ability. Most birds either sing with one lung and for their whole lives, and they never use the other lung, not for singing. Or what a lot of birds do is they sing the high notes in their song with one side of their syrinx and the low notes in their song with the other side. But what some birds do is they actually sing duets with themselves. They can actually make different sounds with both voices at the same time, which requires a higher level of vocal control. The birds that do this most frequently in North America are the thrushes, the icterids, which is the blackbirds and meadowlarks and orioles, and the finches. So those three families really love to do the polyphonic sounds. There are a couple of other birds that also do it here and there. And sometimes you have to listen really carefully or you have to like look at the spectrogram in order to know it. You probably would never guess that house sparrows are singing with both of their voices at the same time because it goes by so fast that it just sounds like a simple chirp. But when you slow it down, like I slowed it down for you, you can actually hear that.
Uh, Thank you, Nathan. My second question is, could you share what gear you recommend for a beginner recordist? What are some accessible recorder mic options, and do you have any tips for getting started on a modest budget? Like I use this, but I don't find that it takes very quality recordings.
So the number one thing I tell people is if you want to get into recording, go ahead and buy equipment if you are going to use that equipment. If you're serious enough about recording that you're going to want a dedicated recording device and you're going to actually carry it with you, then great. But otherwise, for most people, use the microphone you already own, which is your phone. Phones are getting better and better at recording. It still really helps if you're close to the bird and the bird is loud, but your phone these days can do pretty well at recording. And if this is the one that you're actually going to have in the field with you, then this is the one that you should use. As a researcher, I tell people all the time, I would so much rather have a bad recording than no recording at all when I'm doing research. A bad recording is tremendously valuable over no recording at all, or just a description with words or anything like that. So even if you're just using your phone, that's helpful and useful and valuable. If you decide that you want to level up and you want to get some dedicated recording equipment, what I would do is I would send you to the Macaulay Library, their website, and they have a page there where they actually keep updated. Like, here is our recommendations for equipment for bird sound recording. And they are much more uh, in tune with the latest gear than I am. I kind of like buy a recorder and like use it until it falls apart, and then I buy a new recorder. Um, and I also, carry around a 22-inch plastic dish to record bird sounds. Not everybody is that dedicated. So if you want something like in between, or if you just kind of want like a starting pack, go to the Macaulay Library and they will talk to you about options there.
Great, thank you, Nathan. I have a question from Murray. Are different brands of phone better or worse than others? Using Merlin, I often see different results from different phones. Any tips on getting good cell phone recordings generally or with Merlin or BirdNet?
Yes. So newer phones tend to be better at recording than older phones. Uh, the different brands of phone are definitely different. I'm not super clear on, I don't keep track of like iPhone 12 versus iPhone 13 or anything. But all the Android phones and the iPhones are all in competition with each other, and they're all trying to get better and better cameras every generation, better microphones. Your phone has multiple cameras in it now, and it chooses which camera to use based on lighting and distance. It also has multiple microphones now inside of it, and it's choosing which microphone to use based on things like audio recording and distance. The microphone that's ideal for the human recording the human voice at a distance of 2 centimeters is very different from the microphone that's ideal for recording a distant bird. And so your phone is now trying to have both of those, right? So that you can talk on the phone and it sounds good, and also you can record a bird and it sounds good. And it's trying to figure out which one of those you're trying to do, and it's trying to use the appropriate mic for that. Um, One of the best ways to get better microphone recordings or phone recordings, the problem with phones is that they don't have windscreens. So if it's windy, you'll really hear the wind on the microphone. You'll hear the psh, 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 and it really kind of is very loud and it's distracting. So one thing that I do is I'll start recording with Merlin or another app, and then I will put the phone in my pocket and I will let the fabric of the pocket act as a windscreen. And then when I'm done, I'll take the phone back out and hit stop. So when I'm at the start and end of those recordings, I'll have a lot of wind noise and other noise, handling noise that I can trim off. But I've actually gotten some semi-decent recordings that way on windy days with my phone by recording from my pocket. because the as long as you're reasonably close to the bird or the bird is reasonably loud, you can actually record pretty well from your pocket, and it will help with the wind sound.
Thank you, Nathan. Um, so no, oh, if no, we don't have any other questions, we'll just wrap up the Q&A here. Thank you all for such engaging questions, and thank you again, Nathan, for such a rich and memorable presentation. On behalf of Nature Vancouver, I want to extend a huge thank you to you for sharing your remarkable recordings, your stories, and insights with us tonight. You've truly changed how we will listen to birds from here on. Thank you all for being here tonight and for being part of this wonderful bird loving community. We hope to see you at a future Nature Vancouver event. Good night and happy birding.